Greetings, everyone. Here we are in October of 2022, just before Halloween, and I just wanted to orient you vis-a-vis a particular Jupyter notebook. And my practice is generally to put a YouTube inside of a Jupyter notebook to explain that very Jupyter notebook. So, which Jupyter notebook am I talking about? What I've just put in the Finder up here is bfi.org. That's the Buckminster Fuller Institute.org/Synergetics. Synergetics is the name of a philosophy that this gentleman, Buckminster Fuller, came up with over the course of a lifetime. He was born in the late 1800s and lived till 1983. And he was an American inventor. He went to Harvard. He got kicked out. Partly he wasn't that impressed with the academics, but he's kind of drawn to showbiz in a way. But he was a very geeky, and he came up with a very interesting philosophy. And as I'm scrolling down through this current edition, right, in the current edition of this page, it will come to Kirby Erner's page on Synergetics. And if you click on the link there, you'll see it's a link to GitHub, which is a version control repository. It's where we can put these Jupyter notebooks, and they're public there. At least this repository is public. So I just clicked on that. You don't have to memorize that link. I showed you a way to get to it, though. bfi.org/synergetics and scroll down. Now here we are in a GitHub repository, and the Jupyter notebook content begins as you see here. This was a Reed College course, and these students are putting together some C60, which is in very few individual parts that all screw together and don't need any kind of glue or anything. All can be done by hand, and it was illustrative. It was useful in terms of communicating concepts in this philosophy. Synergetics, that was a summer school at Reed College. Middle to high school kids mostly. And you'll find there's a lot of links here from this page to give you more depth into all of this stuff. But really, it's quite an interesting philosophy, and it has a very number crunchy angle to it. And that's partly why Jupyter Notebooks is so apropos, because in addition to being able to embed pictures and do ordinary text as you would on a web page, in a very simple manner, by the way, Jupyter Notebooks can be edited in something called Jupyter Lab, which I'm showing here. There's the same material we're just looking at, and if I do a Shift-Enter, you'll see that behind the scenes, I get to use something called Markdown, for example, to embed pictures. And let's see, what does that look like? There, that's Markdown. It's not Shift-Enter, it's just Shift-Enter renders it. If I just double-click on any of these, it takes me into the behind-the-scenes view. I can make changes, I can, do my writing, and then Shift-Enter and see what it's going to look like. So that's the whole Jupyter Notebook technology. And the other kind of cell, that's called a Markdown cell. By the way, sphere packing is very central to this philosophy, this synergetics. It's very geometric. It's kind of a Neoplatonism. It's kind of a throwback in that polyhedrons are so important. In the old days, in natural philosophy, polyhedrons and philosophy used to be very closely linked, but that somehow all fell apart over time. But in synergetics, we're putting it all back together again. And there's the concentric hierarchy, the nested polyhedra, that form what we call the concentric hierarchy. And by embedding them inside one another in this particular way, we fix certain ratios. And then we want to study those ratios and so forth. Now here you see an embedded YouTube, right, inside my Jupyter notebook. The problem is this is what it looks like to an author who's editing in Jupyter Lab. But if we jump over to, there's another Jupyter notebook I've got going on for Matt and stuff with cryptography. If we jump back to where we were in the GitHub repo and scroll down through the same material, when we get to the YouTube, it won't display. Not in the GitHub repo. It doesn't really want the traffic. It doesn't want to show you a clickable, playable, embedded YouTube at this point. So I'm going to come back to that in a second. Let me just show you the code cells. Jupyter Notebook technology lets you also use a computer language inside what are called code cells, and these are interactive. So there is a lot of computation that goes on. You could say a computational geometry, but it's not complicated. It's not that difficult. And there's lots on YouTube about it. There's lots out there for your private or public learning of this material. There's context for it at my digital math website, where I call this stuff Martian math, kind of for marketing, but also to have it fit into a larger framework of just kind of different kinds of math: Neolithic math, casino math, supermarket math, and Martian math. But that framework is completely independent and separable from the content of this Jupyter Notebook on Synergetics. I just wanted to explain why it's called Martian Math.ipynb. IPYNB is the Jupyter Notebook extension. So I just wanted to show at the very, very top of this Jupyter Notebook, you have View on NB Viewer. And here is where, if you do click, you will be taken to a different rendering of the very same content. It actually reaches into GitHub, pulls the very same IPYNB file out, and redisplays it on a server called nbviewer.org. And here you'll see the embedded YouTubes. Now here's where I'm going to put the very YouTube you're watching. There is none at this particular spot right at the beginning, because I'm making that YouTube right now. This is it. Once it's done, that's where it'll go. But if we scroll down through these sections about Synergetics, introducing the philosophy, getting into the geometry. By the way, this is from the Linus Pauling archives. You can see there's overlap and similarity. What Fuller was studying under the theory of spheres, as he called it, echoes all kinds of research that was going on throughout the 1900s. Like, he was very much in tune with other people's research, as we see in the rearview mirror. That's the concentric hierarchy again, and at the bottom of that section, Synergetics constant starts, and there is the YouTube showing. Because we're in NB Viewer, so I could click it right here and start the YouTube, and then once it started, I could switch over to YouTube and watch it over on YouTube. So the YouTubes show up once you come over to NB Viewer. I just wanted to show you that, and there aren't that many YouTubes so far. As of this recording, there's that one and another one about the modules. These A, B, T, E, and S modules that are little tetrahedral wedges. They show up in this chart, which is also on Wikipedia. They have these given volumes. And then I get into a high precision treatment of a particular example of using those modules, using the S modules to fill in the space between the inscribed icosahedron and this outer octahedron, which we call volume 4. And I use SymPy. SymPy is a Python third-party library. I use SymPy to more fully flesh out Fuller's ideas. So I hope you'll come visit and use this as a jumping off point. If you're interested in this philosophy, here's a good place to start, which is why we link it from bfi.org. And I have an assessment at the bottom. I was a philosophy focus person at Princeton in the 80s and actually late 70s, class of 1980. So I graduated in 1980. I had Rorty, Kaufman, other big names around me. I was very fortunate in that. And I got into Fuller around that time because through Kaufman, Earhart, there was all kind of collaborations going on that got my attention, and I went and got Synergetics from the Macmillan Company directly because I was living in Jersey City, right across from Manhattan. So it was really easy to get all the Bucky books, including Synergetics itself. So I started reading it in the 80s, and by now I have quite a bit online. So if you want to go to my YouTube channel at any point, a lot of it does take you through more of the nitty gritty details of some of this material. And I'm not the only one teaching Synergetics. So go out and look for other Synergetics teachers and have fun. There's much left to explore. Talk to you soon.